Yo, what's up? So today I wanted to go over something that's not about Activision Blizzard because that's literally all I've been covering lately. It's pretty boring at this point, and it's just tedious. And so I think I have something pretty interesting that maybe some of you have heard of it, maybe some of you haven't. It's this EveOnline Riots. Apparently, people in EveOnline, which is an MMO for those of you who don't know, apparently players in this game have gotten super angry and are now rioting to some effect within the game. Now, personally, I don't know that much about EVE Online. I've never played the game. So if I get some things wrong, I apologize. If you are a player of the game, please correct me in the comments. I want to be correct on everything that I say. And so if I'm wrong about something, let me know. But I think this is pretty funny and pretty interesting. So let's go ahead and get into the article and see what it says. And also, if you do like content like this, please like and subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to me and it helps me out. And leave a comment too, even if it's just to say hello. It'll help me in the algorithm and it'll make me feel good. So, yeah. So the recent Eve Online riots, where thousands of fans burn their in-game money, explained. Okay, so this is interesting. I don't. How do you just delete money in the game? You can just like, that's so weird, is that you could just delete in-game currency. Now I guess in like WoW, what you could do is you could like transfer your money to an alt and then like delete the alt or something like that. I don't know. So EVE Online's latest slates of updates, New Dawn, promise to bring with it a return to an age of prosperity to the game's universe. Alongside the first patch of the new quadrant came a November 12th developer blog detailing how CCP, the developer behind the game, planned on delivering that new age. However, rather than rejoicing the beleaguered community, the initial reaction from the players was one of anger and pent-up frustration being unleashed on the form of in-game riots. Thousands of player characters swarmed the game's primary trade hub, the Jita Star system, and spent hours shooting an invulnerable monument with lasers, bullets, and fireworks, causing the system to be locked in simulated lag called time dilation or tie-dye, all throughout that weekend as players vented their rage. Now, I find it hilarious that like just swarms of players are surrounding this monument and just blasting it. They're like, they're just blasting this monument because like they're angry at the developers. I think that's actually hilarious. I wish there was something similar like that I could relate to in a game, but I can't really think of anything. Maybe there is. Um, but also the fact that it creates a simulated lag called time dilation. Now, since I'm unfamiliar with the game, is this like something that the developers put in to slow down like mass combat, or like what is the point of time dilation within the game? If you know the answer, please let me know, because that's something interesting. I don't even know why you would want to put simulated lag within your game unless it's to like slow down combat for some kind of reason. That's super interesting. Um, but yeah, that's funny. I wish I wish I was part of that. That sounds really fun. Shooting the monument in Jita is something of a tradition at this point for Eve players, and the invulnerable structure has taken the brunt of player anger for the years since its creation. Originally, the monument was added to the game to memorialize the players who completed a riddle contest posted by the game's development team. The riddles were steeped in obscure Eve lore, but the game's fanatical fans managed to solve them all in a mere 12 hours. For their efforts, they were rewarded with their names being immortalized in space next to the game's primary trade hub, Jita 44. In the aftermath of players' outrage surrounding the Incarna update and the monetization practices it contained, thousands of players traveled to Jita to send the message, "We'd rather burn our money on shooting an indestructible statue than participate in a real money economy." Okay, so I guess that makes a little bit more sense now. So it sounds like people are mad that there are the new update is introducing some real money trading to the game that wasn't there before, or possibly some things that people feel is like pay to win or pay for convenience kind of stuff. Now, I could definitely understand the frustration there. I mean, coming from WoW, obviously they added a lot of stuff. Um, yeah, so I also find it really interesting that they put some kind of monument in the game for people who solved this riddle. I think that's really fun. So it seems like the developers at some point were really in touch with the player base and had a lot of cool things going on. But this recent update has really, really pissed some people off, which is really unfortunate. I don't ever want to see a game kind of die because the developers lose touch with the player base, or the player base are just like disgruntled with like a update or something like that. It feels really really bad. I've been there for games. I definitely understand how it feels. So if you're an Eve player and you're pissed off about this, my heart goes out to you. I understand. I understand deeply. So if there is real money trading going on, yeah, I obviously am always going to push away from things that are like pay to win, especially in games where that's not the buy-in. Now, I've made videos in the past talking about when pay to win is okay, but generally, I think especially for games like this, it's not good, right? It's like if a game like has already been out and its premise is that it's like skill based, where the more you play, the more you understand about the game, the better you are, the higher you go up. There's no pay to win. There's no pay for convenience. You can't pay to skip things. You can't pay for better like ships or whatever the fuck you buy in this game. Like the buy-in is time to get better. The buy-in isn't money to get better. And so because the buy-in is time, and then they like subvert that with buy-in to be money, then the people who originally started playing the game because they like the idea and they didn't want to have to pay money to do it, they're already good at the game because they've spent a lot of time in it. Yeah, I can see how that pisses people off. It would piss me off a lot too. This incident, along with others surrounding it, were eventually dubbed the Summer of Rage by fans. In its aftermath, CCP changed the path the game was taking, addressing player concerns, and updated the monument to reflect player actions. It was replaced with a broken, smoldering version of itself, enshrining the Riot and Eve history and serving as a reminder to the community that develop and the developers alike. Yeah, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. I think it's really good if you're a developer, or not even a developer, anything in your life, if you can take constructive criticism or feedback and codify that into like the game's lore, or like in your real life, if you can codify that into the way that you develop and present yourself and the way that you think, it's really really important. Like it's one thing if it's just a couple people that are mad. Of course a couple people are going to be mad no matter what you do, but if it's like a whole community and they're saying we don't want this, and you're like, okay, we understand, let's memorialize that, let's understand that on a really deep level, let's internalize that as a team, and let's make sure that this doesn't happen again. And like I think that's really cool. I think that's really cool. It sounds like the developers listened, at least from this instance. I hope that they continue to listen. That's really really awesome. I like that a lot. It would seem that all things are cyclical. Oh wait, this was before. As the monument once again became the focal point of players' rage in the wake of a new dawn. Oh, that sucks that it happened again. Oh, that's really unfortunate. Once again, thousands of players made their way to the Jita and launched an all-out assault on the ruined structure. Players reported seeing drastically different numbers in the system, with some seeing upwards of 6,000 individual characters logged into the system engaging in the protest, either shooting the monument or sitting in the station firing words instead of ammunition into the chat channels. Others reported lower numbers in the 3 or 4,000 range. I'm gonna butcher this name, I'm sorry. Samunder Hermansen, brand director for eveonline, told Kotaku during an interview that the numbers players saw were likely attributed to a bug in the game's chat function. The Jita system is so important to the player experience that it's hard capped at 4,000 people to prevent lag from stalling out the market hub and crippling the game's economy. Okay, so two things. Um, One, I like, this sucks that this is happening again. And again, I think it's funny that they're going around and just blasting this. Is this a picture of the monument? Uh, that's hilarious that they're just blasting it and stuff like that. Two, I'm inclined to believe the developers here that the system's hard capped because yeah, they don't want any kind of crazy lag going on. Like I kind of believe that, but that's not to say that there weren't extremely large numbers of people in the system. Like right, like even 3 to 4,000. I don't know if there's like multiple servers, so if this is happening over multiple servers, or if it's happening in different systems. Like again, I don't really know how the game works, but I could see that. I could see that them having the area capped and then this just being some kind of mass event. Like I could see both of those things happening. It's possibly some of these numbers were exaggerated, like 6,000. If it's capped at 4,000, then that's obviously not possible. So, yeah, I think it's a bit unfortunate that there's another problem with the game, right? Hermanson confirmed to Kotaku that the player cap in Jita was enabled and limited characters in the system to 4,005. That's kind of random, but I bet this is some kind of tested number. Like this is like exactly how many they can handle, right? So it might seem random, but if they can get that 5 extra in there, then sure. Those extra 5 players, he explained, were the game master actions force. Okay, so force moving players into the system, which bypasses the player cap. There you go. So they explain why there's 5 extra. Um, Completely believable. Like, this is something that's probably pretty common within game development. Makes a lot of sense. Hermanson Hermanson went on to stress to Kotaku that he does not want to downplay the player activity over the weekend, saying, "We don't want to diminish that people were protesting. We just want to make sure the numbers are correct. I'm a huge proponent of free speech, and that includes a right to protest. I just want the numbers to reflect the reality of the situation." Okay. So two things here. One, I don't think, unless you're being ultra like obtuse, I don't think you would. I don't think a person would take what he said earlier as him trying to downplay like how many people are angry or like the protests in general. I don't think anybody would honestly take that kind of stance because like obviously what he's saying is like no, these numbers aren't correct. It's like hard capped at this number. Like he's just trying to be correct. And like if you know any developers or you have like developer friends, you know how anal they can be about accuracy. At least in my experience, and speaking for myself, like I don't know, I would probably be like accurate like that. I'd be like, no, it's limited to 4,000. Even I'm not trying to downplay it, but like I understand that kind of thought process. Um, but that being said, if you are in this position and you're a developer and you're like, oh no, it wasn't 6,000, it was 4,000. Like that's such a negligible difference. Like you might be able to put like a post out like way later, or maybe just like like put something in the game that knows that, like that this star system is hard capped at 4,000. But that's such like a minor difference. Like 6,000, 4,000. Who cares how many people are there? The point is, it was capped out. People were there protesting. It's a massive thing. I don't know if correcting the record on that made that much of a difference at all, unless Kotaku specifically asked, were there 6,000 people there? And then he's like, no. Like I would like to know the question exactly, because that kind of matters, right? If the Kotaku is like, oh, so there was a lot of protests in this system, like what do you think about that? And he just unprompted goes, yeah, well, it wasn't 6,000, it was 4,000. Yeah, that's a little weird. But if Kotaku was like, hey, so there was 6,000, were there 6,000 people protesting in this system? And he's like, oh no, it's hard capped at 4,000, but it's still a massive thing, right? Like, yeah, like I could, like those two situations are a little bit different. So I wish Kotaku was a little bit more transparent about their questioning, but like I could see both things happening. And again, if you are a player, I wouldn't ever take this statement here where he's saying like, oh, it's capped at this. I wouldn't take that as anybody downplaying the protests in the game. They're just being accurate for whatever reason, whether they're just anal as a person about these numbers or if they were directly asked by Kotaku. Just my thoughts on that. Why would players be upset by prosperity though? Surely this is a good thing for the game world, especially coming to an end of what is known as the Age of Scarcity. The start of the Age of Scarcity was marked by the surprise change to the resource distribution in eveonline, drastically reducing the availability of materials and resources in the game. About 2 years ago, the goal of scarcity was to reduce the massive stockpiles of ore and minerals players had collected over the years, and bring the economy to a healthier place. The implementation was, as you can expect, not very popular. Logically, they would not, but players inspecting the dev blog closely seem to think that the promised fixes are just further extensions of the resource scarcity disguised by promises of wealth. Okay, that's pretty interesting. I wonder if there's going to go into more detail about that. Let's see. Player reactions to the blog can be roughly summed up to the feeling that they have been led on or even betrayed over the weekend. They felt the only logical recourse was to take to the skies of Jita and pummel the monument into the oblivion once again. Well, maybe not their only resource. Okay, I mean, yeah, so they protested again, makes sense. Forums associated with the game, officials and official and unofficial, were also rife with chaos and complaints since the launch of the blog post. The unofficial Eve subreddit was filled with complaining voices, some launching with pages and pages of well thought out complaints, and others with personal attacks of the game developers. Okay. If you have a logical breakdown of why these changes are bad and why you don't want them in the game, completely fine, reasonable, post that. If you're going to personally attack a game developer, reevaluate yourself. you're just being insane. What is wrong with you? Like you're going to attack a developer because they made a change to a video game that you like, and you or that you don't like the change but you like the game, right? Like that's so extreme. You need to relax. Honestly, if you do that, you're a pussy and you don't deserve to play the game at all. You should uninstall. You should go outside and touch grass, because at that point you're just being fucking annoying. Don't ever do that. Like that makes me so mad when people attack developers for things. Like if you're like personally attacking developer, like you could say like, "Oh, this change was dumb. You're out of touch." Like that's not personally attacking. But if you're like, "Hey, I know where you live, and you're like, I'm going to like send reports, or like you're ugly or some stupid shit like that." Like don't be weird. Don't be annoying. Keep it within the game. Like obviously. Taking the brunt of these attacks was the game's Snorri Arneson, director of product for EveOnline, also known as CCP Rete. Reddit posters were not kind to CCP Ratati. Oh, Ratati. Wait, they typed it two different ways. I don't know. Some accusing him of being out of touch with the player's needs, some accusing him of being unfamiliar with the gameplay loop of Eve, and at least one player demanding he be fired. Okay, that's probably so extreme, but okay. Maybe it's not. Maybe he actually did fuck up that bad that you think he should be fired, but maybe. Arneson spent most of the weekend responding to players, trying to assure them of the change's intent and acknowledge that they were still taking feedback on some of the changes. Yeah. So as long as they're still taking feedback, that sounds good to me. Like, I mean, if they're not implementing any of that feedback, obviously it's a problem. But if they're open to feedback, that's a good sign, right? Because in a lot of games, the developers just don't give a single fuck, right? The first bullet point of the blog promises that nearly all resources of harvestable resources in space will be doubled. This change would provide a greater wealth of resources available to convert into ammunition, spaceships, and equipment modules for ships and structures on the face of it. A very welcome change to the players who have been struggling with the increased costs on nearly every item built in the game. Alone, this would go a long way to solving the problems players have been complaining about throughout the last 2 years. However, this new abundance of resources is countered somewhat by the introduction of a new mechanic, mining waste. Mining waste adds a new statistic to every resource gathering item in the game, a chance to destroy an amount of the resource located in the asteroids and gas clouds strewn about the space. The lowest tiers of these items, most often used by newer players, will destroy an equal amount of resources that they extract from these gatherable items each time they are used. This means that all the asteroids that have doubled in size will be effectively halved by the players mining them, leaving players experiencing a net zero effect from the changes. As players get more and more experience in the game and are able to utilize and afford more expensive mining equipment, the waste percentage goes down until reaching zero with incredibly rare and expensive faction type modules. Okay, so I guess the question is this change intended to like offset how, like, is the game right now as it stands, is it more in line with new players, and like new players are just getting too much, or is it more in line with like established players, and established players are controlling too much? It feels like, from what I've read from this so far and what I understand of the game, that it's the latter, right? Like the older players or the more established players control too much of the game, making it hard for new players to get in. And if that's correct, then this change doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, right? Um, this would have been a better way to implement something maybe at the beginning. I don't know, actually. Now, it probably doesn't make logical sense within the world to reverse this, but like reversing and making it so new players don't get any of the diminishment, but old players do, would probably fix the issues the other way around. But I'm a little confused why they did this implementation, or like what the purpose was. Like if they gave a reasoning to it, like maybe I could understand, right? But this just seems like they're harming new players like exclusively, right? I don't know. Maybe someone could explain why this is actually good for the game. If it's well, again, if the problem is that new players is too easy for new players, then yeah, that's fine. But if it's not, then it's obviously not fine. The addition of waste to mining was not well received by the community at large. The mechanic seems to heavily punish new players more than long-term veterans. EVE Online players are strangely protective of newbies considering the game's reputation. When Kotaku asked Arneson what he thought the community reaction to the mining waste is, he has some surprising things to say. Well, it's good to hear that they're protective of newbies. It's kind of like Final Fantasy 14 in a way. Then, mining waste sounds like a shitty free to play thing. Arneson told Kotaku. Ultimately, it was meant to create a more meaningful choices in mining modules to show that there was a progression over time and let you choose how fast you want to mine versus how efficient you want to mine. You wanted to be. So I'm guessing that there's already a way to increase speed, so you have to choose between speed and efficiency. Um, yeah, I could see that, but the problem is if you're trying to like, it doesn't really fix the problem that there is in the game, right? Because if the problem is that again, everything is focused in the like hands of like the top dogs, then you're just perpetuating that problem, right? You're making it harder, or I guess you're doing no change to the newbies, right? But you're making it easier for like established players, which I guess is fine. If like the newbies are already fine with the game, you're just making it easier for established players, that's okay. But I don't know how that changes the economy at large, right? If that just changes the economy at large to make everything cheaper within like an auction house kind of system, then it's probably fine overall, right? Like if like a lot of more people are able to get more resources, they're able to make more things, they're able to sell more things, then the entire market is going to drop in prices. That's probably fine overall. If that was their goal, is just to drop prices in the marketplace, makes sense, right? It's fine. But if their goal is to remove like power from like the top people in the game, then this doesn't really work. So I'd be interested in what their intention was. I don't know. The team has re-engineered this feature. Arneson continued. We've reversed it. New players will not see mining waste to the new players. This would have felt fairly awful. Only players using a higher end modules will experience waste, and they'll have to choose how they deal with it. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. Like if there's no waste at the beginning, but then you get the faster speeds, then the waste goes up. Like that makes a lot of sense. And hey, that was my idea at the beginning. So hey, I'm a genius, right? Like if you upgrade your speed, you like reduce your efficiency, right? Like that sounds cool to me. I don't know. In another fairly unpopular change, one of the most popular means of mining in the player-controlled empires in null security space, the capital class Rorqual industrial vessel is slated to receive a hefty round of nerfs. The Rorqual's overall mining capabilities, I can't read, are greatly reduced according to the dev blog, and the mining drones it controls will be affected in some way by the above mentioned waste mechanics. Okay, that's interesting. So when it says player controlled empires, so they're reducing the power of player controlled empires, which I don't know. Are there like I'm guessing the way that they worded that there's also like AI controlled empires, so that those ones probably get a little bit of an increase. It probably gets a little bit easier to take over player controlled empires then as well, if I'm understanding this correctly, which sounds fine to me as well. Arneson explained to Kotaku, "I sympathize with one thing about the Rorqual, the aspirational goal. We want to make sure that people want to fly the Rorqual, that they want to have it in space and use their big toy." When asked about the nerf to the Rorqual's effectiveness, he was somewhat less sympathetic, saying, "If you were a Rorqual owner, especially before the scarcity changes, you probably had your investment paid back several times." So they're just reducing that. Yeah, so I can understand why people are mad, but if the developers feel like this like specific ship or whatever the fuck this thing is like too overpowered, is giving you too much return, then just reducing its effectiveness obviously helps out. So I don't know if I really see a problem with that. Maybe if you're familiar with the game, you can explain why this is wrong to me, because I don't really understand how that could be wrong. When you're dealing with mining asteroids to extract raw resources to create the enormous spaceships in EVE Online, you're dealing with a lot of material. Hundreds of thousands of cubic meters of raw resources can be extracted from just a few asteroids, and hauling that much material around the universe is a bit tricky. The gameplay solution for this is called compression. Compression allows a player using either a Rorqual, or a space station equipped with the right tools to drastically reduce the size of materials without losing any of the valuable minerals contained within. Currently, this process is quasi magical. With the simple right click on the right UI element, resources are shrunk by the factor of 100, making them much easier to move and not costing players anything. Okay, I mean, yeah, like if they just want to reduce the effectiveness of that to reduce the effectiveness of the Rorqual or whatever the fuck, then yeah, it makes sense. I don't know why that's that big of a problem, but I don't know. Again, maybe someone can explain that to me. In the developer blog, this would all change. Minerals would be lost during compression. The compression would no longer be instant. In fact, compressing an entire ore field could see you losing 10% of the ore you mined and cost you upwards of 40 real-time hours. That's a long fucking time. Holy shit. Former CSM members and respected industrialist Dunk Dinkle okay, went in depth on the woes of the new compression system in a blog post of his own after testing the new changes in the game's test server. Kotaku brought up Dunk's feedback as well as the feedback from several other outspoken players around the subject of compression while speaking with Arneson. They're pulling it. They're pulling it for now. Arneson said, "Okay, so they're removing the changes anyway." So it sounds like these protests have been rather successful then. If they're looking at a lot of these changes and just deciding, yeah, we don't really care anymore, or we don't want to do them anymore. They still, I mean, they care, but you know what I mean. Let's see. Uh, Arneson went on to explain his reasoning: lossless magic compression. It didn't fit any of the other industrial paradigms in Eve. Okay, it probably makes sense. It doesn't really make sense. Like, if your game is built on like sci-fi kind of stuff, I mean, yeah, you can't just like shrink matter, right? I guess I don't know. Here it is now a choice. It's a choice to compress in space or not. So I can choose to do it or not do it. It's now an option. That was the goal anyway. However, he and the rest of the development team felt that maybe they had missed the mark on this item. So they decided to completely scrap the changes of compression and potentially try them again later after a new development could be done. Also receiving some attention in the new Dawn updates, the full line of mining vessels in the game, ships are being adjusted to fill new roles and support new styles of gameplay. Some of these changes are overall positive, and some are, according to members of the community, a bit worrisome. Okay. Yeah, it seems like they are overall just trying to reduce the effectiveness at end game, uh, like in game mining stuff, while increasing the overall resources to reduce the cost, like over the board, right? Like that's what it seems like. When individual problems with ship changes were discussed during the interview, Anderson admitted that not everything players were seeing on the test server was accurate. There are a lot of errors on Singularity, Eve's test server right now. It's making it very difficult for players to know what is intended and what is not. Okay, well, I mean, maybe if you put out what those errors were or what the expectation was to players, that would help a lot because just having them guess is like it's useless, right? One major example is the ship called the Endurance. It is a small mining vessel specialized in harvesting ice from the massive glacier fields strewn across Eve's galaxy. At least that's what it's supposed to do. Currently on the test server, it is also one of the most powerful combat ships of its size, capable of filling multiple roles and frankly being quite overpowered. Arneson assured Kotaku that this was not an intended change and would be fixed prior to content going live. Okay, so yeah, maybe just putting stuff like that in like descriptions across the game would help a lot. I don't know if it already is or not. That's just like if something like that comes up and you're aware of these issues and you're like, well, this was making it hard to test, maybe keep this in mind and stuff like that. That would help. The gameplay updates, as they were originally framed in the dev blog, did not land well with players. Fans feel that their gameplay styles are being attacked or even destroyed in ways they find unacceptable. The changes to ships that they have spent months or time training skills to pilot and billions of in game credits buying or constructing are being changed in ways that make them much less useful than before. Reddit user u/angry mustache, who some would consider a top mind amongst EVE industrialists, feels that the upcoming changes will do very little to combat the skyrocketing cost of ships of all types. Since the industry changes and the 2 years of resource scarcity players have been feeling the pain of trying to purchase or replace ships, fans have especially bemoaned the capital ships that are used to make the crazy headlines eveonline is known for. Okay, that's a lot of stuff, right? So they're like basically saying, um, so I don't know what this guy's talking about, right? So they're doing little to combat the skyrocketing costs of ships of all types. Doesn't increasing the amount of resources in the systems do that? Doesn't it effectively cut it in half? or am I wrong? Like maybe someone can explain to me why I'm wrong. But if you're doubling the amount of resources in the game, like available resources, then you're cutting everything in half. Unless you literally have one person who controls every single bit of resource in the game, yeah, that could be a problem because then they're just going to like artificially adjust the market to fit whatever they want. But yeah, that's like I don't see how that's true, right? It doesn't make sense to me what they're saying. So maybe someone explain to me how that's how what I'm saying is wrong. But to me, literally by just increasing the resources, they're going to reduce the cost of everything. It's going to trickle down all the way from there, right? Uh, I don't know. During the interview with Kotaku, Hermanson summarized the difficulties the company has had with the path to a healthier Eve over the last few years, and sympathized with the players feeling the pain of it. This has been a crazy 2 year journey since we started scarcity. It's something that's probably never been done in a video game before. The concept, resource scarcity, is obviously extremely foreign to everyone in the context of a video game. I don't think that's true. Resource scarcity is incredibly common, especially if you're talking about like real time strategy games. Although I guess this is like an MMO, right? So it's a little bit different. But even in MMOs, like there used to be resource scarcity within like I'm just gonna go like World of Warcraft, right? Like you didn't have like nodes that would just like spawn individually, right? So you used to have to wait for things to respawn. Um, and like if somebody controlled that route, like especially an enemy faction, then it became really really hard for you to even like get the resources you need. So like I don't know if resource scarcity is necessarily something that's unique to a game. That's something that New World's also trying to figure out because they keep fucking up their economy as well. But yeah, like I get it. Like you need to have some sort of like you need to have some kind of meaning. Otherwise, what's the point? It's just not going to work out, right? If there's no meaning to like the resources in the game, if it's super easy to get the best stuff in the game, then it feels meaningless to get, right? So I don't know. I can see both sides here, I think. And right now I kind of am feeling more on the side of the developers here, but again, I'm not part of the game. This is just from like my kind of unbiased outside view of what's happening and what I read in this article. I could be missing a lot of context, but that's what it seems like from what I'm reading here. Hermanson continued, "It's not something we'd be doing if the plan wasn't to set up Eve for a third decade and to lay out a plan for Eve to outlive us all. The ecosystem was not in a healthy place 2 years ago, and changes were needed to have a sustainable future." Yeah, I could definitely see that. And obviously, there's going to be pains no matter what you do. I feel like um, I don't know. I also don't like the idea of just like rejecting everything from like the top players, but it doesn't sound like they are. It sounds like they're listening pretty intently to the top players to try to understand what they're getting at. So I respect that. Um, so let's see. Hermanson was not wrong at least in theory, when stating the ecosystem was not very healthy pre-scarcity. The game's largest and most powerful spaceships had gone from being a rare, almost mythological sight to being almost disposable in the span of a few years. When MMORPGs lose the aspirational goal of players to climb, people generally start getting bored. Yeah, exactly. Like that's what I mean. Like if there's not like some like astronomically high bar, it doesn't. I guess astronomical is like a bit wrong. Like you want to have like a hard but reachable goal for people to like get to, right? So if like it's super easy to get to end game, it's super easy to build the best ships, and like you just do it, and it's like all right, that's it, game over. Like I want to go find a new game. Then like it's not very productive to keep people engaged, right? It's just not very fun anyway. If you're that person, like if it's like really easy to like control the systems or like get the best like things in the game, it's just not fun. Like there has to be some level of challenge for it to be fun, and what that level of challenge is going to be different for a lot of people. Yeah, sure, there might be some person out there who wants the game to be super easy and it's going to take them like 3 years to get everything, and that's like how they play the game. That maybe they're not skilled at games, like fine, but that's not the average person, right? It's definitely not the average person playing an MMO. I feel like MMOs are so niche that the people playing them are already going to be like so dedicated to the game that it's go like they're going to need like some high level of challenge, otherwise it's going to get super super boring. So that's my opinion on that statement, at least. In response to the dev blog, however, Hermanson shared his final thoughts with Kotaku. It's scarcity, a controversial topic, and has been going for 2 years, which is a long time, especially when you consider the state of the world at large during those years. I think by the end of it, the community all had different expectations on what the end of scarcity meant. Looking back, I think there was an opportunity to change the branding on the blog to explain better to the players' intentions. True, it's probably it's all like the framing of what you say is always very very important. Like it could go from some like you could be in like now I'm having a hard time framing. Like you could be trying to say the exact same thing to players, but the words you use could be the difference between people accepting it, understanding, and being okay with it, and the people like riding in your game and like burning their money, right? Like that could be the difference. So CCP seems to have heard players' concerns, and they are actively trying to address them. A forum post stating most of the changes discussed in the articles went up late last week, detailing the company's plans and asking for more feedback which players have been providing in a constant stream since the initial posting. Additionally, CCP has reportedly been reaching out to individuals and meeting with the CSM to try to get the update uh, to try to get the update to better place with players while still achieving their own goals. The end of the new Dawn Quadrant is very much still up in the air. Will it lead to an age of prosperity for EVE Online as promised, or will Summer of Rage find itself matched by EVE's very own Winter of Discontent? Yeah, so it's kind of a complicated issue, I think, because I see where the developers are like, yeah, this can't continue. We need to make changes, otherwise this isn't really sustainable. And then I see where the pain comes from the players. But like I said before, I'm kind of siding with the developers a little bit more on this one. But I said even again, like I'm like an outsider. I don't really understand. So if you have some insights into this, please leave it in a comment down below. Let me know what I'm missing, what I don't understand, because this is a really interesting thing. I find it's a little bit funny, but it's also a little bit crazy at the same time. And I'm sure annoying to a lot of people. But yeah, that's pretty much my opinion on topic. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Peace.